Welcome to the Yuxtap tutorial. Yuxtap is a website that allows you to see the history of the world. When we enter this graphical interface, the first thing you will see is the orange tab that allows you to select the configuration. In the yellow tab, we have the buttons that allows us to control the actions. To open or close any of the two tabs, just click on them. Then we proceed to open the orange tab. When we open the orange tab, we see that it has three option buttons that say Object, Event, and Time. Below each one, there is a list. First, I will explain the Yuxtap structure to relate these three terms. An object can represent a person, an animal, a building, or a thing. Each object contains actions that explain how its history has changed through the time. An object can have from one action up to 200 or more, depending on the level of detail with which they were created. Objects are grouped into a higher level, named event. The objects can be placed within events depending on the type of relationship those objects have with the event. Finally, the set of events are related over time. To explain this, I'm going from the particular terms to the general terms, and for doing that, we start with the first example that consists in selecting an object that belongs to an event. We click in the radio button that says Object. Then we click on the list that says Select Object to open. And we see that it contains all the objects available grouped in different events. Let's select the object called Napoleon Bonaparte that belongs to the Napoleonic Wars event. Now let's talk about the yellow tab. When we open it, we see that it contains a series of buttons. We begin by clicking on the checkbox that says Light Speed, and then drag the slider as far to the right as you can. I'll tell you later what this means. Then we click on the Fast Forward button. On the map, an icon that represents the object appears, and when clicking on the icon, it displays a window that allows you to read a summary of what happened in this action. As a next step, we click on the Fast Forward button again, which will take us to the next action of the object. We can see that the icon moves on the map, and behind it paints a trace of a certain color marking its way. In the middle of this line, there is an arrow indicating the direction of the motion. Here we must also click on the icon to see the information window. If we look at the top navigation bar, we notice two dates. The first says current world date, which is the current date in real life, and on its right side appears the historic world date that represents the date simulated on the web page. This date will be changing while the button Fast Forward or Start has been pressed, and will be stopped if there is click on Pause or Stop. The resolution on this date is set up to a minute level. We return to click on the Fast Forward button to go to the third action of the object. And finally, we give another click also in Fast Forward to go to the last action of Napoleon. To stop and clean everything that appears on the map, we must click on the Stop button. Once this is done, it will be ready for us to change the configuration of the orange tab. We go again to the orange tab and select the Napoleon Bonaparte object again. Now, in the yellow tab, instead of using the button Fast Forward, click on the Play button and let the sequence be done in an automatic way. Then we press the stop button again to clear the screen. And again, we go to the orange tab as an object, we select Napoleon. While in the yellow tab, let's move the slider as far to the left as it can. Press the play button again and observe how the sequence now happens quickly. Finally, we delete the information from the map. For the fourth time, we select the Napoleon object and now in the yellow tab, move the slider somewhere in between. As the next step, click on Start, and at any time we can click on Pause to stop temporarily the motion of the object. Let's pause. To continue the motion, we click on the play, and to stop again, we pause it. Since we are using a Google Maps map, several functions come pre-established. If you have ever used Google Maps before, you're probably familiar with them. If not, we will explain them all. The map function is selected by default and is the type of interface that we have been watching in that tutorial. It can be activated with or without terrain. In the satellite function, we can have a view as if we were looking at the map from outer space. To return to the previous function, click on Map. If we want to see the full screen, click on this button, and to return, click again on that button. If we want to have the vision at the level of terrain or street, that is Google Street View, we must drag the icon of the yellow person into the map. To return, let's click on this button. You can zoom to the map by clicking on the plus and minus buttons in the lower right corner, or turning the scroll wheel of our mouse. Then we press on the stop button. Finally, we can choose between two speed modes for what is displayed on the display: light speed mode and normal speed mode. In our tutorial, we use the light speed mode because it is the most recommended one to use. The speed of light mode is faster because it only changes between dates where there are actions and ignores dates that do not have actions, while the normal speed mode is changing day to day regardless of whether actions appear or not on that date. That is why it is slower. To change between both modes, all the objects must be stopped or paused, and we must select the checkbox of the normal speed or the light speed. Below them appears a slider that allows you to make actions happen faster or slower. For this example, we select the Napoleon object. And in the yellow tab, we will click on the normal speed checkbox and move the slider all to the left. Let's click on the play button, and we see that the starting date starts within the January the 1st of the chosen year, and it's changing minute by minute. If you have patience, wait until the date February 26 1815 to see how the first action of the object appears and so on. Click on Stop, then select the checkbox that says Light Speed and drag the slider a little to the right and to the left. We're tired of seeing only Napoleon. Now we're going to see other objects inside of an event. To do this, we click on the option button that says Event. And in the list that is unfolded, we must select the one that says Napoleonic Wars. Later, we will click on the play button. There we see that this time, in addition to Napoleon Bonaparte, there are two other objects that belong to the event. When we finish, we click on the Stop button. We come to the last example. Here we click on the option button that says Time, and from the list that is displayed, we select the initial year that we want. It is important to highlight that the years are arranged within the BCE and CE notation, which means before the Common Era and the Common Era. We choose the year 1800 of the Common Era. And click on the Start button. Here, all the objects from all the events will be seen on the map, between the selected year and up to a decade later. In other words, it advances decade by decade, telling the history of the world. When the deadline is reached, it automatically deletes what is on the map and progress is made by itself until the next decade. This in order not to saturate the map of information. When we finish, click on the Stop button. Finally, if you want to know the bibliographies or references that have been used to create such stories, you must click on the button that says References. This will redirect you to a page where they appear listed. Thank you very much for seeing this tutorial.